to the July 2025 meeting of the school committee. Do I have a motion to call this meeting to order?
So moved.
Moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, terrific. Annie, can you take us through any adjustments to the agenda?
Sure, happy to. So we had added the calendar, even though it was already listed there, but added it under action items. It will require a vote. And the program of studies and handbook will be a discussion, not a vote.
All right, very good. Will April be here for that?
No, I am expecting either Senora Fitzgibbons or I can take us through the discussion and what we want to make sure the school committee understands and hear any concerns that you might have.
Okay, very good. All right, we're going to start with public comment. If you're a member of the public and would like to make a comment, please feel free to raise your digital hand and keep your remarks to under 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to presentation and discussion item A, the revised school year 2025-2026 calendar. Annie.
Yes, on behalf of the class of 2026, we just realized that actually May 29th puts them within the regulatory window for the last day of school. So seniors may graduate within 12 school days of the last scheduled day of school. I originally had them going out to the first Friday in June. I'm sure they would be quite pleased if the school committee would set them free at the end of May instead. That's the revision. When we originally counted the days, I thought they had to be in school longer. I haven't asked them directly what their preference is, but I'm making an assumption.
I wonder if I should tell y'all to hang on and go talk to my senior and be like all dishes through the rest of the summer kind of, negotiation accomplished, but no, just kidding. Sounds great to me. I love when they have the rest of the summer to, get started on summer things. So yes, are there any questions or comments about this proposal? Okay, seeing none, do I hear a vote to accept the school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara and Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Okay, moving next to the handbook and the summary of changes, the draft handbook and supplement are all linked. Annie, do you want to take us through that?
Sure. Starting with one, just explain why discussion tonight as opposed to a vote, because between now and August, there may be one change to attendance. We've noticed that we have 3 categories: excused, exempt, and unexcused for attendance, where the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education just says either you are here or you're not. So we make a distinction between exempt and excused, and it tends to create more confusion than clarity. So we want to make sure we're going to check with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, make sure we're clear on how they mark attendance. Is it as simple as you are either in school or you're not in school and there's no middle ground? And then simplify it to unexcused, excused. That we'll have for you in August, and that will be a result of the conversation with the Department of Ed. Biggest change, as you can see through here, food service in the summary document. Food service, our food service director every year provides updates. The biggest change that we want to bring your attention to, in case you have concerns before we bring back this handbook for a vote, potentially the attendance language changed, is the cell phone policy. So our goal is to, one, have pretty similar policies across the district. We will likely be required with the legislation that's pending to file our cell phone policies with the state. And what we're looking to do is have the policy at Hopkins just be the current policy that we have at the middle school, which is a cell phone free, schools are cell phone free zones. The expectation is that cell phones are off and away in either backpacks or lockers. As opposed to now, high schoolers have options of using it during lunch or during passing period, off and away. Senora was going to be here tonight. Something may have come up for her, but I do know that the faculty also, the faculty were surveyed. The majority of the faculty would like to see this change go into effect. And we will be required, I'm fairly certain the legislation will pass, and we will be required to file with the state what our cell phone policies are and what steps we're taking to restrict cell phone use in school. There are other changes there, and I can answer questions about those, but that's the biggest one that we wanted to make sure that school committee, if there were concerns or something you wanted to see differently, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
All right, Paul.
Elaborating on that state policy, I've seen the outlines of it, but I haven't tracked the details. Is it going to, if it passes, would it require a no cell phone policy or just to file our cell phone policy?
Right now, the discussion is to file a cell phone policy. However, the expectation is that there are restrictions on use. Now, this could still change. They're still debating things and it's going back and forth, and I don't even know when it's up for hearing. I could look that up, track the bill. So I don't know what the final bill will be, but there is the initial language that came out was pretty strict around trying to move schools and trying to hold businesses even accountable, like cell phone providers. And there were all kinds of restrictions that were initially discussed. And even attempting to get some support from the education community from some of the restrictions that they were talking about putting on cell phone providers. But for us, my understanding is we, at a minimum, will be expected to file the policy. The tone has been, what are you doing to restrict use during the school day? They're going in the direction of, in school, these should be cell phone free spaces.
It seems that the change, if we were to adopt the middle school policy, the change for the high school would be that they can't keep the phones on their person, and that it has to be shut off and put away the entire school day. They can't use it.
So the
between
difference
periods.
now, right? So we don't want them falling out of pockets and other places. We don't want them in backpacks or lockers and off. So now students are, they may, if they can use it during passing period, or if they can use it during lunchtime, the phone may stay on. They may be texting and using their phone throughout the school day. So that would be the big difference.
Remember, one last question, sorry. I remember that when we had polled parents on this, and there was some question about accessibility for kids during the school day.
Yeah, I think when we originally talked about it, which I could be mistaken about this. So my recollection was initially Miss Camuso and I were like, just get rid of the things. It's this huge problem. And then there was a discussion with the school committee about would there be unintended consequences of doing that. And when we looked at the data around discipline, cell phone infractions did not appear to be as problematic as Ms. Camuso and I thought. If you look now, as I said, the staff, in a staff survey, the majority of staff would like to see the middle school policy across the board. Some staff say they've given up on reporting consistently because it's constant having to redirect children with phones. It's not unique to Hadley. I see Ethan nodding his head, and he's been a high school administrator in a different district, and is still a high school administrator. So teachers now are saying they'd like to see this policy across the board. Also, the difference in cell phone infractions when we disaggregate the data between the high school and the middle school is pretty significant. It's very significant. So the middle school policy is more effective in terms of students don't have to try to police themselves, remember. I'm certain that there may be some parents who have concerns about what if I need to get in touch with my child? I do think that in the handbook, I could be mistaken, but I want to check. So there isn't language in the handbook. I think the cell phone policy is around pages 22 and 23. Students may be permitted on rare occasions and with staff permission in advance to use their cell phone to communicate with family members. For example, if a student had an activity canceled and they needed to arrange a ride, or if a teacher is requesting use of a device for a classroom activity, students may not use cell phones for music. So there's that example of I have to get in touch with somebody in that reason, and they could request. If parents were to get in touch with students, either the student would have to check when they were out of class at the end of the school day, or they'd have to leave a message with the main office to get to the student.
Yeah, I know with a junior taking early college classes and like rides to Greenfield Community College, coordination. Are you getting lunch at school? Do you need me to bring lunch? Can you bring my bat bag for baseball? Because we'll need to go directly from GCC to baseball practice and I'll be late as it is. I can tell you that I would not have survived the last year without some regular access to that said junior. And I'm not sure how this next year would work without any access. But that's one data point I'd like to share.
Mhm.
Did you say, Annie, that you did not see the level of infractions at the high school that the data showed that it wasn't that there wasn't as many infractions?
No, it's actually increased. Let me pull this up now. And the high school is much worse than the middle school. So the more permissive policy has resulted in teachers are saying in some cases they've acknowledged we're under reporting because sometimes the redirection is just exhausting. And let me just try to find this here, but it was much worse in the high school than it is in the elementary. Excuse me, in the middle school. The high school policy is not as effective. And I just want to pull those up for you once I find them.
So if your child is going to Greenfield Community College every other day and needs a parent to pick them up, then we need to liaise with the main office and then have the main office.
Something, yeah, something to change.
And then have,
yeah, if something were to change from, I think the assumption would be, which I'm sure people do, the assumption would be that these arrangements would have been made prior to the school day, but things can change, right? Things can happen, folks changes to their schedules. And so if something happened that was not in the original plan, then parents would communicate with the main office.
I have a question. When did we last survey staff? So
this year. So this year, that's what I'm saying. The majority of staff has said this is untenable, what we're doing right now, and we would like to see the policy the most.
At the end of the school year, though, or the beginning? Because I know, like, when we talked about this before, it felt very polarized, right? And like even amongst the school committee, there was debate on which way to go. And I feel like the information that we had at that time, and the reason we didn't change is because it wasn't as impactful. So then I'm just curious, was it at the end of the school year that teachers brought this up? That's one question I have. Like when they were last surveyed, like what point during the school year were they surveyed? And my other question is, because this isn't something that we have to decide right now, is along the lines of kind of where this is in discussion above. So like, when do we anticipate needing to submit our policies? Like when?
This fall. am almost certain that I will be looking at having to submit a policy this. So that, and I'm just trying to find for you, my apologies, I don't have it right in front of me in terms of when they sent out the cell phone survey and their data breakdown.
Hey, can you please share those survey results after this call with the school committee?
Sure, I'm happy to. I am happy to. And what I'll make sure is that I have the most, I will, and I will also, I will make sure that I do that. And I'll make sure that I have the most up-to-date staff survey.
It'd be
I'm
nice
sure
to
with
see,
the-
like, if you've tracked them too, like if we've surveyed them more than the one time since the first discussion, which was years ago now, like, I think right when Christine first came on school committee, just to see like the trend in there, like, I guess so that there's objective reasoning behind our decision, even if we're making a decision before it becomes a mandate to do something that's much more strict than we've done in the past, showing that it's been an increased incidence and our staff have been reporting, yes, this is disruptive to the class, like showing that trend would be helpful.
And the data, I know you're saying that staff are getting tired of reporting, but whatever the reporting is, that would be helpful also.
Okay.
In comparison to the first time we, whatever initial data we had.
I will. I'm frustrated that I'm not letting me.
It's all right. You don't have to, I mean, this doesn't have to be done now, Annie.
Yeah, and so I will also make sure that I answer every question that you want. But so I'll make sure that you folks have this is frustrating because I had it right in front of me a moment ago. You want to see the actual staff surveys, the responses on the staff surveys, read cell phone policies. And you would like to also see, what else did you want?
The reporting on infractions.
Discipline data broken down by, okay.
As we had seen them last year.
Since the discipline data, since we first kind of brought up the cell phone pouches, right? Because at that point, the decision was made not to do anything because it wasn't that big of an infraction. So that was several years now.
Yes.
So what I will be able to get to relatively easily will be the cell phone referrals for this year. Remember, we changed SIMS systems last year. I can look through it, but the most recent one, our student information management system, changed from SchoolBrains to PowerSchool. So I'll be pulling from two different systems, but I think what's most relevant is what is the cell phone, how many infractions we're seeing now that I've readily available, because teachers are responding to what is happening for them right now. Also, just so you know, I think where some of the staff are coming from and the recommendation is it's hard for us to justify our position vis-a-vis current research and the distraction that cell phones pose in the classroom. So they're looking at two things. They're saying, how are we justifying this based on what research is recommending in terms of cell phone policies in schools, which nationwide, they're leaning toward do not have cell phones in schools. And staff are also responding to the number of times that they have to intervene and ask students to put cell phones away that they should not be using.
Yeah, the latter that I'm especially interested in, not the United States climate, right? We're not going to compare ourselves to Oakland or Chicago school systems. I'm very interested in what's happening in Hadley in particular. Of course, we know that the data about school, about phones and students, but we also know that our students are different I would say, a different type of student than many other schools. I would say that we have very responsible students, and that's not to say that there aren't infractions,
Mhm.
but our students are doing a lot of things over the last years. I've seen students, you know, doing innovation pathways, leaving for jobs, going to college. You know, their their weeks are really busy. I would say with, you know, the data point that I shared, I would say that my child has learning. I would say he's a different processor, a different kind of planner and processor. Without getting into detail, I'll just say that he needs a little bit extra hand holding, and I don't think I'm alone. I so I personally am not in any rush to make any decisions before the state. That's me personally. Um, and I rather than seeing data fast, I'd rather you be comprehensive in what you share with us so that we can approach this thoughtfully.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I have that back. And thank you. A staff member just let me know that staff were surveyed end of May and beginning of June. I can't share publicly the document because it has student names on it, but the staff were surveyed at that time too.
Yeah, and whatever you
Karen,
need to do,
asked when, but I will clean that up, make
redact.
sure it gets to you, and we'll bring back these proposed changes on August 25th. Good news is that staff starts August 25th. We'll let them know that the school committee will be discussing the cell phone policy that evening, and we can inform them on Tuesday of what the decision is regarding the cell phone policy. And students return on Wednesday, but of course, these are all electronic documents, so we don't have to worry about printing and things like
Yeah, and I would say that if you're a parent listening, and you have comments or concerns that you'd like to voice, please reach out to the school committee member that you know. I'm available for conversation as well, so please reach out. Ethan.
Yeah, thanks. I would say that the sooner we deal with this, the better. I don't think that with as loose a policy that we have right now, that it's going to improve at any point. I think that as it stands right now with our policy, kids have the ability to use their phones in class or in school, and they're going to continue to push that envelope because these are kids that have grown up with phones in their hands. And I think it's going to continue to get more and more exhausting for teachers to continually have to respond to these incidents. So my feeling is that a policy that is clear in a way that teachers have a very clear understanding of what to do when there's a cell phone out, what the repercussions are going to be when there's a cell phone out, and what kind of like the expectations are of the student is my opinion the best way forward. Again, when we had this conversation years ago, I was working at a school that had Yonder. That's not a policy. I think the policy and the procedures are far more important than where kids put their phones. If they know what the expectations are, that's the most important thing. But I don't think that if we just and on Humira, we have great kids in Hadley, but they're great kids that have been on their cell phones since they, were 10, 11, 12 years old. So they're addicted to their cell phones. And if we give them the opportunity to use them, they're going to use them. And if it's impacting the learning, I think that's something that we need to consider as a school committee. I do understand that kids travel. I know that they're going to jobs, they're going to community college, they're doing all of these things. It doesn't mean they can't use their phones once they're outside of the building or outside of the classroom, however we would dictate that policy. But I think that if a kid has a change of schedule or a parent needs to come pick them up early, I mean, we all kind of survived with phone calls to the main office and notifications, and I know that's kind of a simplistic way to look at it, but when where I was previously, if a kid needed to use their cell phone, they could come into an administrator's office or a designated place. They could use their cell phone, go back to class, whatever it may be, or they could use the phone in the main office. And I think that works just as fine as a parent texting a kid in the middle of the day to say, hey, do you need to get picked up? And I think that's happening, but I also think we have to acknowledge that that's also probably not what's happening as much as kids texting their friends, being on social media, and things that are kind of distracting them from the learning process.
Can I add one more thing, please? I'm sorry. I know this is just a discussion and we need to move on, but well, two quick things. One, it would be useful, Annie, if there's specific studies that you've been looking at with staff to support it, it would be helpful to share that with us. And I think the reason is because it was a very charged conversation when we had it several years ago. And I feel though, as like, I kind of want to go back and watch that meeting again. I feel as though we had a good amount of us that weren't opposed to restriction, whatever may that was. But the data found at that time that it wasn't as disruptive as we originally had thought it was. And somebody else was, another district was going through the Yonder pouches at the time. The conversation came up. There was a potential grant available, and kind of the consensus among the school. And I respect our teachers very much. I don't mean anything by this, but kind of the consensus was it's not as disruptive as we thought. We're not going to make any changes. And so I just want to make sure that if we make a decision as a school committee, again, prior to the state forcing us to make a certain decision one way or another, that it's really clear and concise that there is an upward trend and there is upward distraction to make this decision, rather than just, well, teachers are saying this, so now we're doing this. I feel like we need to have that data in order to support the decision, given we did talk about it a few years ago. So I think it's great to come full circle and have the conversation again, but I feel like it needs to be backed up with some sort of evidence as to this is why we're making the change now and we didn't then.
And I just want to say, mostly for the public here. So one, again, in August, what I will also provide you all in advance, but then link into the school committee agenda, so it's public, are the number of infractions for cell phone violations in 24-25, the survey results from the staff, and there's more than this, but there is, so the public knows what is being proposed in the handbook is begins on page 22 of the student handbook, has a link to Health and Human Services Surgeon General report about social media, cell phones, I believe, too, linked in there. That is not the only thing the staff has discussed, and then the consequences are listed out there. And I will make sure that additional data is at the August meeting. As I said, staff are back on the 25th. We meet on the 25th in the evening, but the staff can be notified on Tuesday as to what the policy is, and we can adjust the handbook accordingly and then inform students on Wednesday.
And one last thing as we think through this, I think really agree with Tara and Humira about bringing the best data to bear. Also, sort of in line with Ethan, that it's not hard to believe that cells are counter to productive learning, but knowing the parental concerns, as sort of Tara mentioned, and I think Humira shared her experience. I guess that's what I don't understand. Are we really talking just cold turkey, or are, like Ethan said, there are ways that, hey, Jeremiah needs something, my son needs something, he can text because he forgot something. Is there an out there? Just the actual how this would be implemented would be helpful to know.
So again, students would be informed that the high school now has the same policy as the middle school. Middle schoolers have always had to have, just like it had in the elementary school, the expectation has been that middle schoolers or any elementary students who have cell phones, keep those cell phones away in their locker, in a backpack, and off during the school day. So not muted, not completely off. They are not to use, the big difference is they're not using these devices at lunch, at breakfast, during passing period. Now, this is entirely anecdotal, but I have heard from other schools that they did notice a change in the degree of interaction that occurs when students don't have a phone in front of them in the lunchroom or when they arrive at school in the morning. But that's entirely anecdotal. And there is in the handbook, students may be permitted on rare occasion and with staff permission in advance to use their cell phone to communicate with family members. And then there's an example provided. So that question that you had, could a student would simply inform their teacher, I forgot to tell, or this has changed, can I please call home or text my parent, and they would probably be asked, go to the main office and do what you need to do, or take care of what you need to take care of.
Which for some kids could be extremely disruptive, like pull-out services, leaving their classroom a lot.
And I know it's going to take you longer, Annie, but I think it would be helpful to have more than just last year's infractions, so that we can compare it to back to when we were discussing this originally to now. Because last year's infractions are great to see, but we need to see it compared against what it was before when we decided not to change the policy, to prove that there is a definitive difference. And if there's anything else beyond the Surgeon General's thing, that would be great, because that anything more recent that has been a revelation just would be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you, school committee members, for the discussion. We don't ordinarily have others weigh in, but Shardul, I see your hand, and I will allow you to
Just
keep it brief.
the question it's more for Annie is there a recruiting advantage in terms of staff? I mean, compared to other schools, are teachers looking at this as part of their choice for coming to a school district?
I don't know the answer to that. That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. To my knowledge, we've never asked staff that question. So I have no idea if or to what extent it could factor into staff decision making.
Is it a part of quality of work environment? This, is that going to be now part of a criteria for it? I guess that would be my question.
Interesting question. And I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that because I haven't asked it directly.
All right. Annie, is there anything else related to the handbook?
No, one thing that's simple, if you don't mind, I don't think that will have any questions, but the program of studies is supplement. So this would be a supplement to the program of studies. So the handbook and the program of studies are two different things. We had our 2 new pathways approved, and this is just to put that information in there. I didn't foresee any questions or anything about that. That's pretty straightforward.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. We will revisit this again next month.
Yes.
Moving on to item C, superintendent updates. What highlights would you like to share with us?
Just in the last few weeks, we've been busy working on submitting grant proposals, getting some grant proposals funded. When Chris gives you an update through his reports and the grant report, he's also been the lead on the Green Communities grant, and we've gotten a lot of work done with that. So I appreciate everything he's done. And that's probably biggest high points. I did link for everyone the finance and select board meetings that occurred on July 16th under the week of July 14th. And so that certainly later on the updates, perhaps Shardul will have an update for that, but people can watch both meetings in their entirety if they would like. That's about it.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, moving to, well, before we do move on, any questions or discussion on any of the items that Annie has shared in her weekly report?
Only yearbooks are a part of that, but you all saw those. The historic yearbooks and the Gazette did a great article on those too. So that's kind of embedded in the weekly reports.
That's such a cool
Jason
project.
Burns and Jason
Yeah.
Burns did it with the students, and they did a great job, didn't they?
I loved going to the 1911 yearbook and seeing the coal for sale, and it's really cool.
They did a great
And
job.
just congrats to you and the team for the continued impressive grant awards.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody pitches in on those. I'm extremely grateful.
I oddly have one question about the yearbooks. I too have spent some time going through them and looking through relatives and trying to avoid my year. But since then, I've had a couple people ask me that there's certain years that are missing. And people have actually offered to me, I might have that yearbook. Do they need a copy? So if there's one that Mr. Burns is missing, that he needs access to, if you want to shoot it out to us, we might have people that can get him.
I think they were listed in that article. One person already came forward. And I am going to try to find that again. There were 3 years, I believe, that were missing. And let me. So,
You don't need to find it right now. I was just.
yeah, but I'll make sure I send it out.
Thank you. Okay, terrific. We're going to move on to the business manager reports. Chris, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I was muted. Okay, so I have a few reports for you tonight. The first one would be the revolving accounts report. There are still some deposits not posted in preschool and Hadley Kids accounts, but as you can see, it's certainly nice to see that we have positive balances in all of the revolving accounts. Some of these fluctuate up and down a little bit, especially lunch, as the payments lag a little bit behind where we actually report them, but we're kind of caught up now. And as you can see, we have a nice balance showing there. Also, our school choice account is looking very nice. We've gotten a big payment in June that certainly moved that balance up nicely, and might go up a little bit more yet. I still have some journal entries to do. So it might go up, maybe another $20,000-$30,000. So that really puts us in a good position. I don't know if anyone has any questions on this.
I'm curious, Chris, about how the school choice money comes in. Is that from each town, sending town, or is it from the state?
It comes in from the state.
And
I mean, they basically withhold it from the town's Chapter 70 money and send it to the receiving district.
And it comes in quarterly or once a year?
It comes in monthly. What we do is from July through November, we get an estimated amount based on last year's amount. Then in December, they true up the numbers with the October 1st figures that are reported. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down a little. And then that carries through until May. The June payment is bigger because we have any special ed students that are school choiced in. We bill for the entire expenses for those students. And so therefore the payment in this case was significantly larger than we normally get.
Got it. All right, very good. Any other questions for Chris on the revolving accounts report? Okay, seeing none, let's move to expenses.
Okay, so the expense report, again, this is as of June 30th. Still a few journal entries to make. Certainly, we're showing a balance of $60,000 remaining. That will go away as I do these final journal entries. Not a lot of encumbrances left, basically about $3,000. So and in fact, one of them is for $2,200 alone. That's a transportation bill, which we're kind of just waiting for the bill to arrive. So, it's almost all in one bill. Everything else is paid at this point in time. Again, certainly nice to see a little bit of a balance remaining. Basically, it's not because we underspent what we estimated, but more that I did the journal entries to school choice, and again, you kind of estimate how much we're going to need to spend in that, and sometimes it's lower than what we budgeted for. In this case, it was. So now I have to do the journal entry to reverse some of that to bring it back to zero.
Great. Any questions for Chris on the expense report? All right, seeing none, let's move on to grants.
Okay, so it's I guess it's nice to see the amount remaining column pretty much down to zero in most categories. That ESSER 3, we're waiting on invoices still to finish that off. The 240 special education grant, that $18,000 is what's remaining to be spent on the Hartsbrook School. We're always kind of lagging a year behind or more in some cases because they don't typically spend the full amount. We have to hold it for 2 years and then we can claim the money back. So at this particular point, I'm looking to claim back the FY24 funds, and we're carrying the 25, this $18,000 over through next year as well. Circuit breaker, again, that's one of those grants that, well, it's not really a grant, and we can carry over what we earned this year. We earned about $116,000. There will be journal entries here as well that'll bump that figure up a little bit. But that's a nice account to have a little bit extra remaining on, just in case we ever have, one of those, all of a sudden a student needs some kind of special, a one-to-one para or, something like that, where we look and scratch our heads and say, boy, where are we going to come up with that money? And here it is. We have a little bit extra there, certainly, to cover anything like that. So it's always good to have that little bit left in your wallet, I guess, just in case. The 274 grant, this grant is actually through August 31st. We're waiting on that $4,000 bill. And the rest of the items, $1,000 and $2,000 or so. Again, we're just waiting on either a couple of bills to come in or a couple more journal entries to be made, and those will all be used up. So we'll have them all down to zero shortly. Year-end closing typically takes about a month and a half, basically. It starts on July 1st, but we're waiting for bills to come in, and then the journal entries go through, and usually by end of July to mid-August, we kind of wrap everything up. So we're still working on it, but inching closer every day.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Chris on the grants report? All right. Let's move next to the geothermal / ESCO product.
So I filed the RFQ with the state. As I mentioned last month, they make us basically file this RFQ with them. They need to go over it and approve it before we can actually release it out. That's unusual because this is the only kind that I know of that they actually do that for. The rest of them, we're on our own, and we put them out, and we're okay. But this one, it needs the state approval. So I'm just waiting for that at this point in time. They did ask me for kind of a supporting document. They had a list of 10 to 15 questions, and they just basically wanted me to look up in the RFQ docs. And the answer to that one is found on page 22. And so I submitted that with them as well. So I'm assuming now they're just reviewing it, and I'm just waiting for them to get back. I did do, I added an extra tab to the geothermal file that we have. And in that tab, there is a link to the document as well as a timeline. Again, this timeline assumes that the state approves it quickly, and take a look if they'd like.
Great, thank you, Chris. Any questions or comments about the geothermal and ESCO project? Okay, seeing none. Chris, are there any final items to report?
I just wanted to quickly brief you on the Green Communities Grant.
Yeah.
So that is a town grant, actually, but the town had decided that a major portion of the initial funds that we receive would be, if you ever walk into any of our schools, basically, you'll notice that there is a significant space between the two doors. They're all double doors, and sometimes you can pretty much stick your finger through it because it's just not sealed tightly. And the challenging part about that is these doors expand when the sun shines on them. So any of the doors, say on the back of Hopkins, for example, they get that sun on them all day and they expand. And so we need a special kind of weather stripping that will allow the doors still to shut. You know, we can't just put something where if the student shuts one door first, oops, now the doors aren't shut tight. You know, we have to make sure that they close automatically and tightly. So we did reach out to a vendor who has a certain kind of weather stripping that they will use for this. They're also replacing a couple of doors. One of them in the girls' locker room that's really just it's on its last legs and not very energy efficient, obviously. And another one at Hadley Elementary. So those will all be done. We're looking at August for these. And the final item is the insulation at Hopkins, where they're looking more for the perimeter of the building, basically where ceilings or roofs meet walls. That seems to be a particular weak point in the building. We're also going to do things like above the stage, where if you look above the stage, you can pretty much see a metal roof, the underside of the metal roof. And obviously, again, if you're looking at energy efficiencies, that's really not it. So they would be using I believe the expandable foam insulation. They'll spray it up there. And again, this is going to be great for the building because it's, when a building is built in the 1950s and then the addition in the 60s, insulation really wasn't on people's minds like it is now. So it's nice to be able to go in and get that done.
Yes, it is. In fact, I mean, I would say that if there's one thing we learned through the endeavor of investigating the geothermal project is that our building envelope is pretty awful in terms of retaining heat or air conditioning, and I'm looking forward to working on those projects. And I'm hoping that the ESCO can really help guide us. I think in general, the ESCO will be really helpful in determining how we proceed. I think we've never had a chance to process as a team the $9 million price tag that was quoted for geothermal and the difference that was from our original understanding, which was a game-changing factor. But I'm hoping that the ESCO having an ESCO will help us navigate what is a changing environment, lack of incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act, et cetera, to see what really all our options at this juncture. So thank you. Working on that building envelope with whatever community grant we are able to get is a good step in the right direction, I would say. Any
Mayor, if I could just second that. I think that's well said. I mean, I think for those who are listening and maybe don't pay that much attention to it, we have no commitment to a geothermal at all. There's no single commitment to any HVAC system other than we need to do something. And so this ESCO is going to help us figure out, again, based on the current situation, what that best path forward is, not just for HVAC, but for a range of energy efficiency elements. And in fact, we're not even paying the ESCO up front, right? There's values that they get paid over savings over the life of the project. So it's a smart deal. I'm looking forward to them advising us. I actually think many of the incentives for geothermal have been kept in the current bill. Things like solar and wind, no, not so much, but geothermal, nuclear, there's some incentives. I think the timelines might have changed, but so I think that's all of what the ESCO is going to advise us. So again, we've made no commitments, and like you, that $9 million price tag was much higher than our original estimate. So I think we have to do our due diligence and take a look at everything.
I also wanted to just so you folks know, on the resources and questions tab of that geothermal workbook, there is an update on energy tax provisions in schools. That's Paul, you're referencing that it appears that there's differences when it comes to solar and wind and other things, but that's also there for the public and the school committee to view.
Great, thank you, Annie. Any other comments or questions? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, locker room update.
Oh, I was just going to mute myself, but I guess I should not.
Don't go.
So we did get the designs, the finished designs and all of the documents required for the bid back from the designers. I got them, I believe, last Wednesday. And I also asked them just to give us an estimate. So they reached out, including lead times for HVAC equipment and their finishing timeline for the project would be mid-January, which puts us smack dab in the middle of basketball season. And according to Fred, not a good time to be working on locker rooms. So it's going to be a 4.5-month project, no matter how we look at it. But my question to you was, is it your preference that we continue on going out to bid in September, or do we push the project off and do it in the summer? And that's just, something that's obviously your call. I just need to know what your thoughts are on that.
I wonder, Chris, if you put out a bid in September, when are you realistically evaluating what your options are and making a selection? And do you need that timeline? Do you need that month's timeline between selection, perhaps in December, January, I don't know, in order to line up all the other, factors, all the other factors that we would presumably put in play for a summer 2026 build out?
Right. So September is early. And, of course, vendors would be hesitant to quote a price in September for the following summer because it's a long ways off, number one. And, inflation is kind of up in the air as far as they're concerned. The other tricky thing is that, we need prevailing wage for these jobs. I can request a prevailing wage schedule that would be included in the bid docs, which they're in, right now, for example. I requested it from the state, I received it, and they're in the bid docs. And so vendors review that, but those schedules are only good for 6 months. So if you look at, just say we went out September 1st or something, and 6 months from there, those would expire and they'd have a whole new set of prevailing wages, which they don't know what they would be at this point in time. And then 6 months from that, which would be just say next September 1st, the project really wouldn't be finished yet. So now they're looking at another set of prevailing wage. It's tough, I think, for the vendors to price it out with so many unknowns like that. So typically what we would do is go out, say in February or something, at least at this point we have the design work all done, which is certainly nice. And the bid package put together. So we'd have to replace things like the prevailing wage, but everything at least would be received. So if we went out in February, we could say select the vendor at your March meeting, and then we'd choose the vendor, we'd sign a contract with them, and they could begin ordering the materials, which would, that way the lead time would not be during the summer when they could be working, or certainly during the school year as it would be now. It would be basically before they started the project, so they could hit the ground running.
Great. Any Tara with her hand? Yeah.
I'm fairly nervous to push this project out a year because we've made a lot of changes already and the cost has already changed quite a bit. We've had to kind of modify our plans based on cost changes over a few months ago now. I guess I'm kind of nervous to push that out even farther, to find out that something would become even more expensive, and then we have to either modify it again, bring it back to the town, or whatever else. So I can appreciate it interrupting. I just am also very equally about waiting and having there be an even bigger problem by the time we're able to start the project and have it being more expensive, and having to modify again what we do to accommodate the costs.
Just
Yeah,
add
here-
something to that. Oh, sorry, Nora.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I hear you, and I feel awful for our girls in particular, um, and also our boys, but our girls' locker room hasn't been touched perhaps since the building of the school, and I know it's disgusting, and the girls only go in to change their clothes, and it's an embarrassment to the to other communities coming and seeing how we, um, how our girls' locker room looks. Um, But if we're not gonna build until next summer, and like inflation is a fact for sure, um, I I don't know what going out earlier will do around that 4-month build out process, right? We might have answers earlier. The other factor that I'm thinking about, and I know that the town is talking about an override, is that I don't want our locker room project to be perceived as the reason that we are going out and asking for people to pay more taxes in our town. I would rather that just not be in a factor in people's minds. The town has been very generous in supporting the schools. We're doing a lot more in dipping into our school choice, um, you know, essentially savings in case any factors, change. Boiler goes out, 3 new special ed students are in town, whatever. Um, so those are a couple of reasons why I would be okay with, if we're not going to build until next summer anyways, to go out to bid a little bit closer to that period.
If I may, I was just going to add that if, in terms of timing, when we go out to bid, it makes more sense to time that closer to when we're going to begin the project. To your very well stated and well taken point, Tara, of are there advantages to starting the project earlier? There may be, we can't know for certain, but one could logically assume there could be advantages that pertain to cost. However, there are a number of disadvantages as well, which is disruption to the building, disruption to the school. And Mr. Mish made a really good point today. He said, I would have concerns about staff or students who are worried about dust and particle inhalation. And so that also would pose challenges if we were doing the project during the school year while students were in session and stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I mean, the destruction could be real, the dust could be real. I'd be cautious to have my child there if there's, I mean, I guess you could wall it off, but then right in the middle of basketball season, I don't know how you do that. I mean, Terry, you got a great point. We don't know the future. I know in my sort of industry, there's also talk of next year being, I know this is counterintuitive, being potentially somewhat cheaper. Right now, you have so much uncertainty with the tariffs and who knows where they're going to go. I don't know if that would downscale to the actual supplies that our contractor would build, but there's a world where it isn't necessarily more expensive. Potentially, it's cheaper. I hesitate to say that because we know that's rarely true, but there'd at least be potentially, hopefully, more certainty with pricing if we waited a bit, and maybe we get a more competitive price that way.
So just to clarify, based on what you said, Annie, are you saying that we wouldn't be able to start the project sooner, no matter when we went out to bid?
Well, there would be some serious disadvantages that I think we'd want to consider. The likelihood, if we were doing something this fall, the likelihood of this being finished by basketball season, it's just our experience that timelines usually, it's rare that you don't have issues that you need to follow up on any project. So one concern is, we started sooner in the fall. Are we now creating a situation where we don't have usable locker rooms during basketball season? And then this other issue of disruption, dust, particles. So it's not that you couldn't, it's just you'd have to say, and what are the consequences of that? Right. So in any scenario, there's an upside and a downside, and that's the downside of doing construction or a large renovation while staff and students are present. Disruption to the learning environment, the potential, as Mr. Mish said, dust. I mean, I don't know, that's something he just brought up. I'd have to look into that more thoroughly. And there's certainly consequences of waiting. So in either case, there are consequences. It's just a question of which ones are easier to live with.
Also, by dust, it could be potentially asbestos related dust in those old ceramic tiles or those old.
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
Yeah, okay. So possibly yes, possibly no.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear from the people that would be doing the work as to what they would do. Maybe Shardo, you have some comment on that, but like just what they would say about that. And I know we're here speculating, but I'm sure they have had to work during the school year before, so it'd be interesting to hear what they had to say.
Shardul?
It's in my construction and renovation experience, I think the disruption potential is kind of always under kind of understood in terms of how disruptive it actually is. But as far as asbestos, before they do any demolition, by Massachusetts code, you have to do a test. You have to test all of the material to see that if there was asbestos. Then it has to get obviously remediated or encapsulated or somehow ensured that it doesn't get airborne and into the air. And so, could there be somewhere in the material? Most likely it's in the drywall. So if they're doing any drywall, I know from buildings that we've done construction, we've mostly found it in the joint compound, things like that. It could be I doubt it's in the tiles, ceramic tiles, more unlikely. It could be in the grout.
Ceiling tiles, perhaps?
Okay, but can I just stop before we speculate about
Yeah.
a highly toxic substance in our school that we might cause to be friable while the students are there? Let's say, as of now, we know of no such asbestos. There would be fully examined. I imagine that our contractor would have put this asbestos abatement into the bid because it's very expensive. We are not going to do anything that'll jeopardize the students and related to asbestos.
Absolutely.
What I was concerned about was dust. And dust is a separate issue from asbestos. Dust itself, as Shardul says, is very difficult to manage. So I support us delaying going out to bid for this for multiple reasons. It sounds like we don't want to be doing the major part of the construction while the kids are there. It seems like, as you said, Humira, maybe there's some benefits about sort of waiting from the optics perspective about when do we expend the money. I definitely understand Tara's perspective about increasing costs, but I think we have to weigh everything here and the pros and cons and I just the logistics of having a major part, one half of our gym off limits, or even, cordoned off while we have lots of people come in for basketball games. I just don't know how logistically we would do that.
Can I
propose waiting.
Yeah, can I ask a question? And I apologize if I missed this, but do we have a sense of how long this project would take to be completed?
They told me 4.5 months.
So obviously starting in the summer doesn't really solve our like when the kids are around. Just something to say out there, like if there was a chance that this could maybe start in the late spring after basketball season. I know obviously it's still work in the school, that we still have dust to worry about. In thinking about the time it'll take, because I hear 4.5 months, and I think if you start in the summer, you might hit basketball season with any type of delay or extension to the project. So just putting it out there that if we could maybe think about the spring, if it were to work out. Obviously, there's other things that are in play, but that timeline leads right into basketball season.
I think it leads into soccer season, right?
Well, I'm saying if we start in the summer, yes, in theory, like soccer season would be going on. But if that project goes, let's say 4.5 months becomes 5 months, now we're in November, we're in basketball season.
I'm thinking it would need to be right after graduation, June, July, August, September.
I guess my only comment would be, you're going to be further along in the construction, I would recommend not having anybody in the building when they're doing demolition. That's the most, that's the worst. Later on, the dust mitigation is a little bit easier. Only other thing I want to comment, I have to stop in about 10 minutes. So I know I looked at the agenda, I'm kind of on the bottom of the next section. If I could be moved up, that'd be my request.
Shardul, I welcome you to move up and give your report now.
Oh, okay. I think Kumara said it best about the optics of the situation with this override. We're talking about essentially it's going to be a 15% increase to the taxes for pretty much everybody. And right now with the current override, it's roughly about $2.3 million override, and which equates to about $800 to most people, on average house value of about $450,000. So I think it's something that there's been a lot of deferred things, whether it's wages, and also spending money on our buildings, and so we're creating essentially a building fund to go and help kind of catch up on preventative maintenance and upkeep on a lot of the buildings that we haven't been doing. And I will say this, going forward, we've done a lot of development in the town, multiple buildings, and we've also added quite a bit of services, mainly doubling the fire coverage prior to the kind of the ambulance being the second ambulance, I should say. We only had 12 hours of coverage for fire department. Since then, we've doubled, so we have 24-hour coverage, and that additional coverage obviously doubles the cost of the fire department budget, and that includes the second ambulance as well. So there's definitely a lot of pressures that the town, financial pressures, but it also, going forward, we definitely have to just be careful on a lot of these things that we would like to have, and there are many different priorities right now in terms of infrastructure that the DPW needs new water tanks, which is $6 to $9 million. There's a new DPW building, and obviously the school also needs a lot of, I walk through there and I haven't been there now in 30 years and it looks the same. So that's that's a sign that things need to improve on that standpoint. So there's a lot of things that need to get done. But this override is going to be pretty hot button topic. Obviously, 15% increase in taxes, and on top of that, we're going to be increasing water rates. There's a lot coming to our taxpayers. So every department needs to be sensitive to what's happening. Hopefully, as time goes on, our finances improve and the revenues improve, and new development and new revenue sources come into play, and things will hopefully be better. I think there are going to be brighter days than they are right now, but right now we just need to make some tough decisions financially to get us through the next couple years.
Thank you, Shardul. And what I know from my MASC role is that we're not alone. A lot of towns are in this position, a lot of rural communities, especially, not only with the state's lower revenue, hitting lower revenue targets, but also because of declining enrollment and what that does in terms of how much money we get from the state to support our fixed operations as a school, and how a lot of towns are struggling to, they're making choices, tough choices between school and fire and police, and it's extremely contentious in other places. I'd like it not to be contentious in Hadley. I'd like us not to get embroiled in that kind of, like we have been very lucky, very fortunate to have the Hadley community support, and wherever we can be prudent, it's our responsibility to be prudent and to so if we don't need it, we do need it. We need the locker rooms, but if we can, if we need 4.5 months to build it anyways, then at least deferring until 2026 to go out to bid might be one of those prudent decisions.
And I will say this, from my standpoint and from some of the other finance committee standpoints, the school department, you guys are pretty much the department rock stars in terms of managing your budgets really well. So I will, it's a testament to Annie's leadership and this committee and how you guys really do a very good job managing a lot of these things. And I think you guys, I guess in my opinion, this is just me, I think we probably owe you more than you've probably given up, than more than you guys need to give up things. But I really feel that going forward that you guys definitely need to. I think the town needs to give more attention to some of the things that the school needs. I think you've given up quite a bit more in the past that you could have asked for that you didn't, and so that's just my sentiment and some of the other people in the finance committee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any Tara, go ahead.
Thanks, Shirtle, for adding your sentiments in there too. And I guess just to kind of chime into what you're saying, I think maybe that's what I do worry about, is that when things get tricky and it starts to affect people on a more personal level, decisions are harder to make. And whether or not, people are able to see, well, yes, the school deserves this versus this is what the town can afford might be two different things at that time. I guess that's what I'm worried about. And I'm wondering if, Chris, we can at least find out kind of a breakdown of how long each like phase of the locker room would take. So if, it was mentioned like the demolition part is going to be the messiest and the most concerning for students and staff to be in the building. Well, how long is that going to take? How much of an impact? Because to Ethan's point, I'm sure plenty of people, I'm not saying we're deciding, however it's decided when to do it, but plenty of people have done construction when other people are in the building. So I guess maybe getting just a little bit more clarity on how long it takes, what the impact would be, what they do to mitigate, and then thinking strategically then, once we have that information, what makes the most sense for us as a start date.
I can certainly ask the designers for that information. They were able to give cost information, their cost estimates. So if you give a cost estimate, you should have the number of hours that you're paying for. So that should be able to, to give us some kind of a timeline for each part of it. Sure.
Thank you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to leave, but thank you and have a great night. Take care.
Turtle. Okay. Any final comments on the locker room update? Okay. Thank you. Moving to action items, do I hear a motion to approve the payroll and expense warrants for July 2025?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Moved by Ethan, seconded by Tara. All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Moving to the approval of the school committee minutes for May 19th, 2025. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Moved. Seconded.
Great. All in favor?
Okay.
Aye. We have already approved the revised calendar.
Mara, may I ask, I just added it just for clarity, be easier. Since our discussion that's to be continued is the handbook, is the school committee willing to approve the program of studies supplement about those programs? At least then, as students are entering over the summer, they could have that information. See the distinction, the program of studies was about the two new pathways.
Yep, I don't see why not. Do I hear a motion to approve the addition of the healthcare, social assisting and engineering manufacturing program of studies information and add it to the handbook as it stands today?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Thank you for catching that, Danny. All right, school committee updates and general announcements. Tara, what you would know about the playground, CPAC and CES?
Sure. So no update on CPAC. CES, we're going to have a meeting in August outside of our normal board meeting to review candidates that are review a discussion of what we're looking for in candidates over the summer. Playground construction is underway. So we've got Carl's there. They're doing all their prep work, and a huge thank you to Chris for coordinating all this and figuring out, any little areas that we might foresee a problem and mitigating that. He's had so much work with the fields thus far that he's become an expert in drainage, planning, writing plans for the playground and whatnot. So huge thanks for that. And we're on track. I think he's meeting with the playground guy tomorrow, I think he said, just to kind of finalize. And then as soon as Carl's is done, we'll have them coming in and starting work. So we're super excited.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Can't wait. As it relates to finance, I think we got a great finance update from Shardul. Thank you, Shardul, again. We'll move next to fields. Paul.
Do you have an update?
Sure. Just a
Whenever.
brief one. Jeff and I took a walk around the fields this morning, actually. We're still waiting. We did find some areas where the grass didn't take last year. Unfortunately, when the first fertilizer was applied in the spring this year, it had some weed preventing ingredients in it, and it's not good apparently to plant grass when you have the weed killer in the fertilizer. So we're waiting, and at this point it would be okay to apply the seed to those areas, but July is not a great time to be planting grass. I mean, your prime time is spring or fall. So we're looking at a September time to get those areas sprayed, and hopefully they'll fill in nicely. I did speak with a couple of vendors about adding some drains to the field. If you remember, when we built the athletic fields originally, we thought the JV field was the quote, wet area of the field, and it was. So when we did phase 2, we added more drainage to the JV baseball field, and essentially they put drains every 20 feet. And what we did was we added more drains to have them 10 feet apart, and the difference was amazing. I mean, it really drained it nicely. What we've found is that the varsity baseball field is now the wet spot of the fields. So there's a couple of areas that we need to put additional drains in, but Jeff needs one of those areas in the outfield for soccer fields. So we decided that we'll probably do this in phases, where we'll do just the infield of the varsity field now. And then, once soccer's done, we can work on the outfield. It's a tough thing really to to try to find time to do that with all of the sports, that use the middle of the field. But we will do that, and at least the infield of the varsity field will be taken care of. So I did reach out so far to 2 vendors for pricing, waiting on that, and I have to find one more that can do drainage as well. I'll reach out to them, and we'll go from there.
That's great news that we're going to be installing drains at 10 feet. I'm very curious to hear how much that costs. I'm also, that this may not be a great idea, but you mentioned seed. It's not great for summer. Do people put down sod in the summer? Is that a solution that might enable, I mean, it might be an expensive solution. So tell me, again, this is not my area, but if we were to put down sod, can that grass take hold and begin to, reinforce the proper drainage? I don't
Yeah,
want to
we
think that
could.
require rip it up when we put down drainage, but if it were not an issue, that it wouldn't be ripped up, then is that something we should consider?
The only issue with putting down the sod is that right now the grass is, for lack of a better term, under warranty. It was difficult, obviously, with when the work was finally able to be completed. And so we really didn't know what the grass was going to look like until the spring of this year. And that's when we could go and, they needed any circle bigger than 8 inches needed to be reseeded. So we walked around and we found those areas where it needs to be reseeded. And we withheld funds from the final payment to cover that, and we basically said, when those areas are reseeded and grow in, you can have the remaining funds. I can tell you, just based on what we spent on the sod, that wouldn't cover, the cost of the seeding. So, it would go above and beyond, what we planned on spending. Some of it, if I don't know if anybody's, been around the fields recently, but a lot of it is over, they dug a little culvert way over between the varsity softball and the JV boys field. It's running along the walkway. And that did not come in. And, you'd almost hate to waste sod on an area that really is just designed to kind of hold water, so using the, in this case, they'd probably just spray the seed. That would probably be the most cost-effective route.
Very good. Thank you. Any other?
Do you need anything from us on the signage?
Oh, that's right.
I'm sorry. I did. I received your email today. Thank you very much.
That was
I'm just basically waiting to see if anyone else has any comments, and then I would like to order it. So, that would be great to get it in there.
Yeah. Sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say I'd go. I walk the Hopkins field most days, and I would say it really looks good. It's starting to really show all that work and effort that's been put in.
Nice.
It looks really good.
Nice.
all right. Excellent. Thank you, Chris and Paul. Moving next to capital. Christine's not here, but Chris and Annie, is there anything to know?
I don't think anything more than what we've already discussed this evening.
Okay, very good. And policy, Ethan?
Nothing to report on the policy
Okay, great.
this month.
Terrific. For item F, general announcements, we've already heard from Shardul. Is there a select board liaison to the school committee?
Not yet. That's still blank there.
Okay. By the way, I ran into Joyce Chungalo today at the Big Y, and she is sending her love to all of you. She loves the schools. She was very effusive.
Before you adjourn, Humira,
Yes.
may I just, I'm going to say it out loud, the yearbooks. I have your years that are missing: 1965, 1976, and 1980.
Look at that.
65, 76, and 80 are missing. I think we already heard from one person who may have one of those years, but those are what Mr. Burns and his students are still looking for. And if I could, I want to make sure, I started typing in a draft August agenda, that I have everything that we're looking for. When we hear from Ms. Camuso about the handbook, myself and probably Senora, we'll look at those summary of changes again. The school committee would like to see the research around cell phones, staff survey data, and cell phone discipline data. I anticipate by that time, since these bills have already been reported out favorably in the legislature, requesting bell-to-bell bans and cell phone free zones. But if there is an updated legislative update, I'll include that as well.
Great.
With that information, and still the draft handbook. And for Chris, regarding the locker room project, thank you, Chris, for all of the gathering of information you continue to do. We're looking for an updated timeline for bidding and construction options, and asking what issues we can anticipate regarding construction and how best to mitigate those consequences of construction. I just want to make sure we're not missing anything that you folks want to see in August. And it's a nice little trailer for the viewing audience, who I know is already setting their DVR to August school committee.
Which will be on August 5th at 5:30. And there will be a policy subcommittee meeting on that day at 4:30. All right. If there's nothing else, I hear a motion to adjourn at 6:56 p.m.
I moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Well, happy July, everyone. See you again at the end of the summer. Thanks so much.